And under those circumstances, you know, freedom, personal freedom, and economic freedom are one and the same. You know, Bastiat wrote an interesting book a few years ago, like 150 years ago, called The Law. And you see, you people all heard of that. But it is such a sound principle in the law. You know, and it's a small little book, but I have some French students that come to my office once a year. There's a small libertarian group of French students, and they come over. I said, "Are a lot of you over there?" And they say, "No, but we're growing in numbers." But frequently I'll ask French people what they know about Bastiat, and there are more Americans that know about the freedom movement here understands Bastiat more than most of the French people understand. But Bastiat had a very simple principle. And it says that if you can't do it, the government can't do it. So are you allowed to take from your neighbor because you want it or need it or desire it or demand it? No. I mean, fortunately, we're still at that point where we don't allow you to go into your neighbor's house. He has 2 cars and you don't have any. Well, I have a right to it. I need it. I want it. And I need a job. And, fortunately, you're not allowed to do that. But it's perfectly permissible to hire a lobbyist, send him up to Washington, pay his way into this job that he gets, and you vote for the largesse, you vote for the IRS agent to go. March in the house with a gun and say, look, you will pay up and we'll take care of somebody else and we'll transfer this wealth. And a simple premise is you can't get government to do what you're not allowed to do. That is the moral principle of the law. I would say that that very sound, fundamental principle, if we would follow that, we would have much greater prosperity. We would have much more peace in the world. We would not be the policemen of the world. And our economy would thrive, and we wouldn't steal from people through the depreciation of our money, through a fraudulent, counterfeiting system that we have today. That is where our prosperity would come. Our problem, though, today is how we go from the transition. I'm convinced, like I said, that we're much further along than I ever dreamed. There are more people out there, more people joining us every day. The young people are receptive to this. True revolutions occur with young people. Now, those of you who don't think you're so young, you have to be young at spirit if you've been involved in anything that we do. No, it is. Freedom is such a young idea. It's only been tested for a couple hundred years. Tyranny has been around for thousands of years. The tyrants have been there, and believe me, it seems like they're always available. No matter what society there is, they're available. And then when the people become soft, and they forget about how prosperity came, and then the tyrant comes along and promises these good things, the tyrant, sucks them in, and then your freedoms are gone. So today we have safety nets. We have safety nets. We give up our economic liberty because nobody could make it on their own. But governments produce nothing, so that's a fallacy. But now, since 9/11, a very, very serious event, that if we don't fully understand it, we'll have a lot more of them. But the great harm that has come from that is that so many have been willing to say, we have to sacrifice some of our freedoms to be safe. I do not believe that it is ever necessary to sacrifice one bit of personal liberty to be safe. One of the problems that we had on 9/11 was the lack of respect for private property, the lack of understanding how the market works, and lack of an understanding on who really is ultimately responsible for safety and security. I mean, we're not safe in our homes because there's a policeman outside the door. I mean, where the most policemen are, where the most laws are, is where the most crimes are. Because the laws, you put a lot of policemen in there, you have laws against owning guns, and there's anti-drug laws, and the people can't even defend themselves. So where are you safest? Well, you'd think it would be really dangerous living out in the rural areas or in the country. Now, I think this is a rather rural area, and I know the rural area is a little bit better in Texas, but let me tell you, nobody gets messed around with in the rural areas. My guess is that in an area like this, and a lot, percentage-wise, geographically, probably most of North Carolina is protected by the Second Amendment. On 9/11, our attitudes were completely different. Who owned the airlines? Well, the airline companies were supposed to own them, but they've been subsidized and regulated to death for all these years. And I understand, other than Southwest, I don't think any airlines ever made any money. You know, it's always losing money, and they're losing a lot. And yet, the responsibility for safety was given to the government. I mean, the FAA set up the standards. We had to go through checkpoints because of the hostages before. But the rules were no guns on the airplane and don't ever resist. And lo and behold, I guess somebody figured that out. So they didn't need a gun. All they needed were razor blades, and nobody was going to resist. And the responsibility wasn't with the airline company. But what happens in places where the owner has all the responsibility? I live in an area where there's a lot of chemical plants, but the responsibility is with the company. They have fences, and they have the private police, and they have a lot of guns. Nobody messes with them. And so it's much different when the responsibility. How about delivering money in an armored car? You know, that looks like an easy target. I guess occasionally they get robbed, but not very often. I mean, because they know that there's somebody there trained and has a gun. But we did the opposite. We had laws that protected money being hauled around in trucks that did not put the pressure on the owner of the company to protect its cargo, its valuable passengers. So what did we do right after 9/11? We further institutionalized more control from the government. Have they ever come up with any decent way of monitoring us? I mean, every day it gets worse. And I don't feel a lot safer because all of a sudden I see somebody in front of me in a wheelchair and they're taking them into a room to search them. You know, the whole thing is just out of control. And there's so much electronic mechanisms that are available today that airlines could actually figure out a way to get us through those lines a lot faster and perfectly safe. But nevertheless, what has happened, I think, is we've lost confidence. A lot of us have lost confidence and faith that freedom really works. And freedom does work. And freedom, fortunately for us, is still very popular. You know, talking about whether freedom is a new idea or an old idea, it is a new idea, and the best experiment was here in this country. But I think in the last 100 years, we have gradually diminished our freedoms, and they're being rapidly diminished right now. And of course, we're going in the wrong direction. So it is up to us really to revive that spirit, and that can be done. A lot of times when I bring up the issue of money, even today, I had an interview today, and the immediately said, well, do you want to go back to the gold standard, you know, to belittle it? And I said, well, there were some imperfections in the old gold standard, but what we ought to be talking about is the imperfections, the illegality, the immorality, the unconstitutionality of paper money. Yeah.